We are going to get this party started. This is the 2022 California Bicycle Summit. Very grateful to all of you all for coming. This event moves back and forth through parts of California every 2 years. I am very proud that this year we are hosting it in my hometown of Oakland, California. And I am also very proud that my mayor, Libby Schaaf, is here to welcome us to the beautiful city of Oakland, California. It's no surprise that she is here to welcome a group of bicycle advocates. She has been a leader among the best in California in promoting safe streets for bicycling. It is thanks to her that we have in Oakland a Department of Transportation. A lot of cities don't. She helped to reorganize the city, which is no easy task, to create the department and consolidate and organize a lot of safe streets activities into a department that could be much more effective. She's also helped support that department's work in implementing its transportation investments in one of the most equitable ways possible. And that also was no easy task when a neighborhood of privileged folks are used to getting their streets paved instantly, but the department, thanks to its commitment of equity, prioritizes the neighborhoods that need it the most, even if they're marginalized people who aren't used to getting attention from the city. Those people complained, and the mayor stood fast and strong with the Oakland Department of Transportation's equity. She has also helped bring money to her support of Proposition KK, which is a paving and affordable housing bond, making that connection between streets and housing, which we're going to make all during the summit. And she will support, with the help of our local bicycle advocacy organization, White East Bay, getting that measure passed. She's been a big supporter of public art. Some of you went on the Paint the Town bike tour yesterday. That is some of the results of the work that Oaklanders have done with the mayor's support. And then finally, she's just a good recognizer of talent. She hires great staff. One of those staff people is here, and so you'll get to see for yourself. And another, I don't know if it's here, Ryan Russo, is the head of the Oakland Department of Transportation, and she helped bring him in and make a big difference. So with that, I would love to welcome Mayor Libby Schaaf.
Good morning. Welcome to Oakland, California. I hope you are as excited as I am to physically be with people. And in doing my official job of welcoming this amazing summit to a town, and if you're from here, we call ourselves the town. It's that peachy place across the bay that is the city. We are hella proud of our status as our town. If you know anything about the town, you know why this is the perfect place for this. This is a city that believes in active transportation, that is looking at the connectivity between transportation, the public space, housing, equity, where these things all collide and where we must exert a more radical imagination to get to a future that we deserve. I want to do two things in my 5.5 minutes. One is to just brag on ODOT. Thank you for recognizing that when you actually name a place, name, a goal, which is a Department of Transportation, not just public works, mobility, not just concrete. You really do attract talent. And I have been a City of Oakland worker for 23 years. So I have worked with these people. And I've been so excited to just attract this new talent, this new energy to a field that deserves it more than ever. So what has the fabulous, we call them fantasticrats, and I urge all of you to talk to your mayors about like unleashing the entrepreneurial bureaucrat, right? And I feel like they tend to gravitate to places like departments of transportation. But what has this fabulous Oakland group of fantasticrats gotten done? 30 years ago, in 30 years, we have tripled the bike share mode in Oakland. In 30 years, we have quadrupled, we're almost at 200 miles now. Am I getting this right? Am I messing this up? Okay. Of bikeways, we quadrupled that number. And in 30 years, we went from 0 bike parking spots to 11,719. And yes, that is the number. I have a weird memory for numbers. And you know, you talked about Measure KK. We asked the people of Oakland to invest in infrastructure, in our roadways, and in an equitable vision for not just fixing them and making them safe, but thinking differently about how people move around the city with dignity and safety. And guess what happened when we put that on the ballot? We're asking people to raise their own taxes, right? This was a property tax. It passed with 82% of the vote. I love you. And I want to talk about what that equity piece means. When our paving crews showed up on the street in deep East Oakland, just behind Allen Temple Baptist Church, an elderly man walked out onto his porch, and he said to a man who was paving, who was probably old enough to be my father, but of course he said to him, young man, and his eyes welled up with tears. He said, I have lived in this house for more than 80 years, and I have never seen the city come to fix my street. Thank you. That is why we do it. Finally, I just want to also celebrate some pandemic wisdom. We have had tremendous loss and suffering during this pandemic. But I do want to challenge you when we talk about radical imagination and what this moment is supposed to mean for us. We, the stewards of the public right of way, the keepers of the commons, because that is what we are. That is a sacred duty. We do emerge from this pandemic with a new appreciation for slowing down a little bit, for feeling the fresh air of the outdoors on our faces. And so remember that there are some gifts of wisdom that have also come with us through this moment of suffering. And how will we take advantage of that new realization of wisdom? Well, I know if you're on a bike and you're in a place like Oakland where bikes can actually be pieces of art, and all get to know the scraper bike team, then I know that as you think about your sacred duty as keepers of the common, as people who need to put the public back in public right of way, you will take full advantage of this moment. Enjoy being together and enjoy being in Oakland. Thank you.
So I should probably tell you who I am, but you'd like that. My name is Dave Snyder, and I am privileged to be the executive director of the California Bicycle Coalition. This event is a big event. because I'm the executive director, I get to introduce all these cool people. So the next is Secretary of Transportation of California, Toks Omishakin, who will be joining us virtually. He is someone that I met before he even came to California. He was the Deputy Commissioner of the Tennessee Department of Transportation and also the chair of an active transportation committee at AASHTO, the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials. That shows you that he has been dedicated to walking and biking for a long time. It's not an easy task to get AASHTO to care about biking and walking like that. He made that his job as a member of AASHTO. I was thrilled when he was appointed by Governor Newsom to be the head of Caltrans, and even more thrilled when the governor just recently appointed him to be the Secretary of Transportation for the state of California, which is in charge of Caltrans, and I don't know, 10 other agencies that have to do with transportation. An extremely challenging role that he is bound to excel in. And I'll finish with mentioning one of his many accolades. This man who you're about to meet, Mr. Toks Omishakin, is the Transportation Person of the Year according to the California Transportation Foundation. And with that, if we can bring up the secretary, he has a few minutes, and he's agreed to take some questions, even though he's speaking remotely. So. Some very knowledgeable people on the challenge that we face, and we're going to have a little panel discussion about why is it taking so long. And it'll be 10 o'clock.
Okay, I got some sound there.
Okay, you want to take that one? So
Welcome, Mr. Secretary. You are here in Oakland virtually at the California Ballroom. We're very glad that you managed to squeeze us into your busy schedule. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much. A very good morning. Can everybody hear me well? Can you hear me loud and clear? I hope so. Yeah, I'll get going if okay. Looks like everybody can hear me. An excellent morning, everybody. Wish I could really be there in Oakland in person. but there are two events going on in Sacramento today that are preventing me from making a trip.
Yeah.
Can you still hear me? Okay. Okay. Okay, good. I'm hearing yeah. The people hosting the Zoom, they may want to go on mute because I'm hearing a lot of just a lot of people talking there, but that's why I just want to be sure. But I really wish I could be there this morning. I'm a big fan of a lot of the work that Cal Bikes has done over the years. And in particular, Dave Snyder. Dave, thank you for that warm introduction. I heard just a little bit of what you said in the beginning. I'm sure you were saying bad things about me on the tail end, but I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Dave, for your leadership within the organization, and thanks to everybody who was there as well. Heard a little bit of the comments from Mayor Schaaf. Appreciate her leadership and the things that she's done for the city of Oakland in the transportation space. And I know there's much more to do. And Ryan Russo as well. Sounds like Ryan is in the room. Haven't seen Ryan in a couple of years. But everybody in the room, thank you so much for being there in person. If possible, if my slides could come up, I'll try to get through this quickly so I can have a discussion. And I have a hard stop at 9. I need to get to the next event that I need to get to, and it starts at 9:30. So we'll get going here. So as Dave mentioned, for the last 2.5 years, I have been the director of Caltrans. It was a huge honor to get appointed by Governor Newsom to serve in that role. And while I was in that role, one of the things that I clearly wanted to do, I wanted to make a focus after a certain point in time of being there, was shifting the organization's focus from being one that is solely focused on infrastructure as the ultimate outcome to one that is centered, one that is fully focused on people, and people ask me very often internally within the department, as I talked about it, one of the largest or the second largest department in California state government with more than 22,000 people. People would come up to me and say, you keep talking about people focus. What does that mean? What does that mean and how do we get there? And I was able to, with the leadership team within the organization, come up with a bit of a framework of what that actually means for the department and for the people of the state. And if you go to the next slide. And what that means is that the ultimate outcome no longer becomes how quickly we can build a bridge. Things like, on time, on budget have always been a focus for DOTs. And I think that's important to be prudent with taxpayers' dollars. But at the end of the day, we are building the infrastructure, whether it be a highway or a paving project or sidewalk or bike lane, whatever it is, we're building that for people at the end of the day. So let's keep the end in mind. And the end is making the transportation network, the transportation system better for all people who use it, regardless of their physical ability, regardless of their gender, regardless of their race and economic background. Let's make it work for them. And so that's the what. What does that mean for people? And how? The how part is what you see on the screen. How do we get there is what people externally and internally begin to ask. And this is the how. And I can tell you the how, these foundational principles, they were not based on where the political wind was blowing at a particular moment in time. This is early 2020, before the pandemic, before George Floyd, before President Biden and Vice President Harris. This was becoming our foundation. So it wasn't based on any particular push from any direction, but listening to people in the community and really understanding the shift, the pivot that Caltrans needed to make. And I'll tell you that in my leadership role as secretary now, this will continue to be the flagship for transportation for the state. There may be some things added to this at some point in time, but this will continue to be a primary focus for us as a state. And so let me talk about these just very quickly, and then we'll try to get through the rest of the slides here. Number one, safety. I think it goes without saying. Organizations talk about it all the time. They say safety is our number one priority. Easier said than done. What does that actually mean? Well, part of the reason why this is the number one challenge is because California has more people down on its transportation system than any other state. More than 10 people a day die on the transportation system of the state. And at least 3 of those 10, in many cases, are the most vulnerable users of the system. So people who are walking and biking are often the people that are getting killed. And with 3,600 people dying annually, there's no doubt it had to be a focus. And to do that, that meant funding, that meant policy, that meant clear actions on changing this. Now, this is not something that can happen overnight. We have a vision zero belief within the department across the state, but to get there, it's going to take a significant push. There were people who were not completely bought into this idea that we can get to zero. And what I repeatedly shared and showed people, and everybody in the room should know this, is that there are clear examples of people having, or communities, municipalities, haven't been able to drastically reduce their numbers across the world. The example I always like to use is England, a country, or the UK, a country of 56 million people. So roughly 40% more people live in the UK than we have in California. Their fatalities today, I think their numbers last year were roughly 1,500 of 56 million people, 1,500, where 40 million people were at over 3,700. So more than double their fatalities. Now, in 2005, their number in the UK was roughly 3,400 people. That's what the numbers were in the UK. So from 2005, 3,500 people were killed on the transportation system to today, 1,500. So more than 2,000, a reduction of more than 2,000 people. How did it happen? A shift in policy and funding. They didn't have a reduction in policy. They didn't lose the amount of people living in England. Even, they had positive growth of people in that period. The reason why they were able to do it, a shift in transportation policy, and it's largely centered around a safe system approach. We've now adopted that same policy. As I left Caltrans, it was one of the final documents that I signed within the department to make that shift, to move the focus from just the people who are using the system, to increase the amount of focus on making sure the network, the system itself, is safer, is one of the main tenets of that shift in policy. And I believe we can get there. Let me shift gears real quick to climate action. When it comes to climate action, goes without saying, this is one of the biggest challenges our state faces. Nearly 50% of the bad air quality in our state, the GHG in our state, comes from the transportation sector, more than any other state, I might add, and more than the national average, more than the global average. If you're wondering what the global number is, the global number is roughly 16% of GHG comes from the transportation sector. The national number is 29%. California, 50%. Reason why? Our huge and significant dependence on only driving single occupancy vehicles. That's the reason why. It's clear and simple, more than any other state. We have to change that. And the investments that are being made in ZEV and zero emission vehicles in the state, we're leading the nation, we're practically leading the world as well. They're important, they're good, but that can't be the sole focus. We have to diversify the transportation system of the state, continue to invest in transit, continue to invest in walking and biking opportunities. And again, that's going to continue to be the sole focus. I would add as well that land use is critically important. As you go back to your cities and municipalities where you live, continuing to lean on people who are in charge of land use, people who are in charge of zoning, to make sure that our development pattern is more supportive of a climate-friendly approach is something that needs to happen as well. And as far as equity goes as a priority, what needs to happen here is that we have to shift from a place of focusing on symbolic change to systemic change, from symbolic change to systemic change. Before, in the early part of 2020, we came out with an equity statement, the first ever for Caltrans. And again, not just because of the political winds at the time, but we also came up with a framework of 4 Ps to guide our equity work. But again, this is one of the areas where I think in the past, we've focused so much attention. We've put a lot of attention on symbolic things. I think changing the name of public facilities, public highways, from names of individuals who've had a harmful past when it comes to issues around equity or racism. I think that's important. Those are noble ideas, but changing the name of a school to one that is more friendly to these issues, or name of a highway, is not going to change a life. Let's focus on changing lives. Building highways through communities that divided communities, that changed lives. That had some negative consequences on Asian, Latino, African-American communities. Let's reverse that today. And that's something that I'm gonna continue to make sure is on the forefront of all the transportation work in the state moving forward. Next slide. I'm gonna kind of clip through the rest of these quickly because I wanna get to questions. If there are any questions from the audience. Multimodalism, I've talked a little bit about this already, but I'm hoping that part of what can happen with our lexicon in the transportation space is that we not forget as well the health, the economic impact of becoming more multimodal in our approach to addressing transportation challenges in the state. Because one thing that I've realized since I've been here almost getting close to 3 years now, is how vast the state is, number one, but how different it is, that it's not a monolithic state by any means. And so we talk a lot about the environment and in many places across the state, but there are some parts of the state where these issues, people struggle with understanding the importance of multimodalism, but they have economic challenges and they have health challenges and challenges in many other areas that if we invest in multimodal transportation in those places, it can help their challenge areas. And so we have to continue to broaden out how we talk about this and the importance of this particular issue. So look forward to working with many of you in the room to continue to expand our approach in this area. Next slide. So to get there, to get to a place where we have more active transportation projects, more varying classes of bicycle facilities, more pedestrian facilities, and more investment in transit, in high-speed rail and buses, all the things that we want to see and we know will have the intended outcomes that we're hoping for. What's going to need to happen to have these projects is a clear investment, an investment strategy, a continued shift in policy within the varied departments at the state level and at the local level. And of course, we're seeing the federal support that is now happening as well with IIJA, with the federal infrastructure bill that passed. So the policy and the funding that we need to make this happen is going to continue to have to be the place that we focus. And I believe we're getting there. I can't recall the time as exciting as this one for transportation. I really just can't. And I've been in this space now for 20 years. And this is the most amount of momentum we've had to do the right thing for people in transportation. So let me just run through quickly some of the policies, some of the funding ideas, for funding approaches that are coming through right now that I believe are going to continue to transform what we do for active transportation and for bicycling in particular. Number one, the governor's budget proposal, 500 million additional money for active transportation is being proposed. 100 million specifically for bicycle and pedestrian safety to support the HSIP to support the HSIP program. The governor has also proposed as well. I was excited and partner with him and his office to announce potentially 3 months of free transit. If you've not heard this, this is groundbreaking. No other state in the country has ever done this, but potentially 3 months of transit if its budget is able to move through. So a lot of additional funding for transit and bike ped or active transportation that I believe will rival the federal numbers. Quickly, some other things. The Caltrans active transportation plans are moving forward. It's one of the things that I heavily focused on when I was at Caltrans is our ability to be able to deliver these active transportation plans for all 12 districts. All of them are going to be completed. They're all going to be finalized this year. And 4 key criteria areas are safety, equity, mobility, and preservation for all 12 active transportation plans. And because the state is so vast, it's critically important that each one of those 12 districts have their own plan and has sort of their own outlook for what's needed in those areas. The switching gears, complete streets performance targets are now going to be a part of the SHSMP, the Strategic Highway Manual Plan. It's now going to have a complete streets focus and performance targets as a part of it. There's now a complete streets decision document. This one is really, really important. This is where, as projects are going through the development phase, a project delivery phase, where the project manager and ultimately the district director are going to have to sign off on why or why not, particularly why not a complete street feature was not added as a part of the transportation project. So that will have to be documented. It can no longer be just somebody in a room somewhere just making a decision and saying, oh no, we just don't want to do that. It has to be signed off on by leadership, the project manager, and the district director ultimately. So that's a key element that's now become a part of things at Caltrans. The DP 37, I'm sure many of you heard about this, director's policy for complete streets, one of the most progressive or aggressive, however you want to look at it, complete streets policies now in the country. I believe a heightened commitment. There was already a complete streets policy for Caltrans, but even a more heightened commitment to complete streets within the department. Several other things that I could run through from a policy planning document standpoint, but I want to get through the rest of these slides just very, very quickly. Next slide. So I want to thank Dave and again, many of you at Cal Bikes for a lot of the support around us being able to adopt policies around walking and biking within the department. One of the shifts that we made very early on was one around the funding part again, where we tried to, and were successful at being able to get a $100 million reservation for active transportation as a part of the shop. It wasn't the easiest process to get done, but we were able to get it done. But we partnered with Cal Bikes after that reservation was added into the shop, that $100 million reservation. And let me tell you just quickly what came out of it. 34 total projects for that $100 million in all 12 Caltrans districts. What is that? What do those 34 projects look like? 13 separated bikeways, more than 50,000 feet of new sidewalk gap closures, 27 projects in underserved communities, 26 projects on Main Street locations, 2 traffic calming and road diet projects. When are they going to be done? The more important part, in 2021, 2 projects went to construction already last year. This year, 10 projects will go to construction. In 2023, an additional 4, and in 2024, 18 projects will go to construction. So moving forward, not just something that will sit on the shelf within the department and not come to fruition. So thank you for your partnership very much on that. Next slide. reconnecting communities, and I'll go through these very quickly. I think an important part of our equity work moving forward is going to be how we identify how to bridge the gap that's been created by so many of the transportation projects or infrastructure that we built over the last 60 or 70 years. And again, we have $1 billion that's coming from the federal government to support this through IJA, through the latest transportation bill. But regardless of that, the governor is also committed specific dollars to support this. $150 million is being committed from the governor's budget to support this particular issue. I think it's one of the most important things that we can take on. And I look forward to seeing the fruits of this new venture, this new labor that we're taking on. We've already identified that the planning arm of Caltrans has already identified 69 different locations across the state where we could bridge the gap. Transportation should not be a divider. Transportation, we know, should be a uniter for our communities. And this is what this Reconnecting Communities program is going to do. And we're going to go after the federal money as well, the $1 billion that's been set up to make this program happen. Next slide. CAPTI and SB 743 are going to continue to be the overseeing, the sort of guide for all the work that we do in this space. There are documents like CTP 2050 that have also been put in place, and since I've been around in my brief tenure here, but there are statewide, other statewide guiding documents like CAPTI and SB 743 and now 285 that has recently passed that will also be critically important for our work moving forward. Next slide. I want to get to questions here. Clean California is also another big opportunity. Governor Newsom, this whole idea of revitalizing the public spaces of our state completely came from him. He reached out to me and said, how can we transform the public spaces in our state? And he came up with this idea of $1.1 billion investment to not only beautify the state, to make us, help us see the importance of our public spaces more, but to educate people about it and to employ people, give employment opportunity. And I'm thrilled at some of the outcome that we've already seen. More than 2,500 tractor trailer trucks of litter, 2,500 have been removed from the public spaces in our state. So a lot of amazing work that's happening in this space. Next slide. Finally, partnerships are going to be critically important for any success that we will continue to see in this area. I want to work, we want to work, CalSTA and its departments has to continue to work with local government, with regional government, and in particular NGOs, many of you in the room, to get there, to get to the place that we need to get to. We've got a lot of work to do, but man, I can't think of a more exciting time than this one, where we have the policy and we have the funding to make the things happen that we've wanted to see for many years. So again, thank you for that partnership. It's going to continue to be a focus, and I look forward to what we're going to be able to achieve together in the weeks, months, and years to come. So with that, I know I went probably way longer than I should have, but thank you again for the invitation to the state transportation team. I would love to take a couple of questions very quickly before I run. Thank you very much. I can't hear if there's people are speaking on that end already, but I'll wait to hear any audio.
They just go now? Okay, so how do we get $2 billion for bikes right away?
$2 billion for bikes. Look, you know, I think so. I actually think something like that is very plausible. I think we're laughing, but I think it's plausible. It's going to take time, but we will get there. I think the plans that I mentioned, the active transportation plans that I mentioned that the districts are doing, the work that local governments are doing to identify spaces, places for investment. I think it's showing up, and we can spend that money. I mean, there are major facilities, bridges in particular I can think of in Bay Area and even parts of Southern California where we could make an investment and take up $150 million to build major bike projects. I think we can get there. I don't think we're there right now. The governor is making unprecedented investment right now. I mean, an additional 500 million on top of the 500 million already in the ATP program that the CTC runs. So with the general fund in the position that it's in, I wouldn't rule it out for the future. Next question.
Is this on? Okay. I have two questions. First of all, how has the housing crisis impacted the speed at which you guys are looking at mobility options? Obviously, people that work in lower paying jobs or in the service industry have to live further from cities. That puts pressure for demand. So that's part one. And the second part, infrastructure is obviously number one because it's related to the number one issue for biking, which is safety. But in addition to that, we have the other key component for mode shift for bikes, and that's behavior change. And I just wondered what your thoughts were on that.
I'm sorry, the last part of what you said, I heard you say safety and then you said, but it is also what?
So safety infrastructure is obviously number one for in terms of encouraging people to use biking as a mode of transportation. But a second part of that is getting people that are non-riders to ride bikes. So in what way is the department thinking about or internalizing ideas around behavior change?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. I'll start with the latter. The former question, the earlier part of the question that's a very long response. But with the latter question, I think you're spot on with the fact that if we're going to get mode shift in the state to the percentages and the numbers that we want, you're going to have some shift in mindset about what biking and walking opportunities really mean. I think one of the key things that needs to happen, and I mentioned this early on, is the land use. If we continue just to invest in the infrastructure, but people still feel people feel like they have to ride 5 miles or 10 miles. You got to think about the potential novice rider. If everything is so far away via bike or walking, it's not within sort of a 5 mile or 3 mile radius, something that's doable, that shift is going to continue to be hard. So, I mean, rarely are you going to see people who regularly ride 25 miles or 15 miles to work or to shopping. We have to continue to think about land use, but we also have to make the infrastructure clearly safer. I think we have to get beyond thinking, and I think we're there in California a little bit already. We have to get beyond thinking just paint is going to be enough to get people, regardless of where they are in their life, as far as ability and age. That paint alone is going to do it. Paint is not going to be able to do it. We have to build more protected facilities, especially on the state highway transportation network, because the volumes of traffic are heavier and the speeds are heavier. Making investments like that, and even off-system investments, trails. That's the way that I think you're going to be able to get people to get out more. And I believe the more you see people on the system, the more you get people out on the system. I think that alone in itself, I think, induces the interest and induces demand. When you go to Copenhagen and you go to London and all these other places that we rave about, I mean, there's so many people on the network. There's so many people. People don't even think about getting in a car. They're like, everybody else is doing it. It's a part of the culture. And by building safer facilities, building land use that is more connected and dense, and making the overall system connected to transit and varying other modes of transportation. That's how we get there. But we're not going to be able to get that 8 to 80 that we talk about all the time. 8-year-old to an 80-year-old. We're not going to be able to get them on the system if it's just a paint on a highway system and they got to ride 6 or 7 miles. Ain't going to happen. Not going to happen. It's got to be more than just paint. It's got to be safe. It's got to be protected. It's got to be connected. And I think we will start to see that shift. And it starts with us at the state and many of you at the local government level in the room. So very, very good question. The housing question is, I'm sorry, that's a longer question to answer, but I agree with the direction of the question that you were asking there. I'll take one more and then I really have to run. I need to be somewhere at 9:30. One more quick one.
Thank you for your service and good luck with your new position. You've done a great job for us so far. Very looking forward to it. I'm referring to a piece of legislation, AB 1946, which is legislation is to ask Caltrans to develop some education material to be on the web, specifically about e-bikes, electric bikes. We're experiencing a lot of issues related. It's sometimes a little bit outside the realm of Caltrans to put together an education project, but I hope when they do, because I suspect the legislation will pass, that they include information about how to use a regular old bicycle as well as an e-bike, because there's certainly plenty that people, especially new bikers, need to know about what a stop sign means, for instance. And I look forward to expanding that request from the legislature to include education for all ages about all ways to use even acoustic bikes. That's what we're calling the bikes that don't have electric power. Excuse me, I didn't come up with a name, acoustic.
Yeah, well, I'm not familiar with 1946 yet. I'm sure my Ledge team, Deputy Secretary for Ledge, they'll get me up to speed on it at some point. I'll say I don't comment directly on pending legislation that is still going through the process. Don't necessarily take a position on it, but the tenets of this issue in general, as far as education on bikes and e-bikes, is something that I believe in. I think we have to continue to educate people about how to use e-bikes and what it could mean for transportation. Just like we're making the investments in ZEV for automobiles, we need to continue to expand our investments in e-bikes and educate people about them. I think it's a little bit broader than even just the Caltrans issue. There's the DMV that is now within the portfolio of departments that I engage, that I oversee, even a DMV and their responsibilities as it relates to the driver's manual. I think things like that can incorporate ideas around just more safer walking and biking. Maybe not necessarily e-bikes, but just the fact that we need to educate people about the varying modes in the state even more. So anyway, very, very good question. I look forward to getting up to speed on 1946, but I don't directly comment on pending legislation. Thanks for the question. Again, Dave, thanks to you and everybody at Cal Bikes for your leadership and leaning in on these issues every day, and the push that you've made in the state. Without you and your organizations, all of you there, California won't be where it is on this front. So I'm grateful, thankful for all the work that you're doing. So thanks a lot again for the invitation. Appreciate it.
Ballroom is an Oakland treasure. The event center where we're meeting is also a really special place. We looked for a locally owned spot. We wanted a place that meant something a little bit to the community, and we looked at Oakstop and we met its owner, Trevor Parham. And in the course of telling him that we like your space, but it doesn't have a lobby, we're thinking about closing the street in front so we can use that as the lobby. And we're thinking about walking back and forth between these two facilities on the street. Where his reaction was fantastic. I've located my facilities deliberately next to BART stations, and I really think that creating pedestrian-oriented cities and pedestrian-oriented streets is vital to our commercial success and our livability in our cities and my business. We're thrilled to learn that, and therefore I'm thrilled to introduce Mr. Trevor Parham as the owner of Oakstop.
So Dave is exactly right. The California Bicycle Summit is emblematic of Oakstop's values and Oakstop's mission. Oakstop is a campus, and I want to make that clear. You're in one location of a campus comprised of 5 different buildings within a 5-block radius here in downtown Oakland. And when I created this business, I was focused on using a transit-oriented development strategy to drive local placemaking. And so I know all of you here understand placemaking because that's a lot of what it means to have walkable and bikeable cities. And we believe that we can use real estate and activate real estate as a strategy to engage our entire community. We focus on access. We have, again, 5 buildings in 5-block radius here that are active 7 days a week, almost 12 hours a day for a variety of different purposes. We have people that use our spaces for workspace and co-working. We have conferences and events like this. We have art exhibits. We have markets. We're trying to do everything we can to ensure that commercial real estate is an asset to our local communities. And by keeping the commercial real estate in close proximity, that's when you actually start to have a place that is superimposed over this central business district. And so we really believe in the idea of having a walkable campus where people can learn to exchange ideas, people can create connections, and people can also feel like this city and this place belongs to them. So I'm originally born and raised here in Oakland. I live not far from here. I actually, when I built this business, I would bike from my house every day on the other side of Lake Merritt, here in downtown Oakland. And really, it was an opportunity for me to experience what it means to be sort of an actively engaged citizen in my local community. I live here, I work here, I create opportunities for other people here, and I also get to bike everywhere that I go as I do the work that I do. And so I'm just so excited that we have a summit like this because, like I said, this summit is emblematic of our mission. When I started, we started the business with just 1 building with 4,000 square feet. We now have 6 buildings with 80,000 square feet. And I'd like to add that that growth that we've achieved over about 7 or 8 years, that was all done without any outside capital investment. And so what that means is that we're a for-profit social enterprise. And so what that means is that our business grew because the community voted with their dollars to say that something like this was a valid resource that this community really could use and that it was an increasing demand. So when we went from 4,000 square feet to 20,000 square feet to 40,000 to 80,000, that was all a sign of the community saying, yes, this is something that we need to help us get to the next level. And so again, when I started with 1 location, I was thinking, how do I create a brand that is focused on Oakland, that is focused on transit? It's Oakland at transit stops. It's Oak Stop. And as we grew, I think the big question on everyone's mind was, well, Trevor, you have a great space with some workspace and some offices and some event spaces. Why do you think that you need more of these locations? Do you really think that this is something that people need more of? And what I understood was more so than people needing more buildings and locations, we needed to do more to activate this local neighborhood and this local economy. And so it was about strategically positioning more and more locations to drive more and more activity. And I'll tell you, we continue to be in a place where people need more and more space. And so it's not just about what I'm doing with my business. It's about how we can start activating this entire community to understand how to use commercial real estate as an active and accessible resource for the greater community. And so again, the fact that the California Bicycle Summit is closing down the street on Telegraph, that is the vision for us. We want people to understand that this city belongs to them. And by blocking it off for cars so that people can then occupy the streets, that's actually showing people the power of what it means for people to be active and empowered in their own communities. So again, I'm just so excited that we have this example of this summit activating multiple Oak Stop locations within one sort of vision, one mission that is the California Bicycle Summit. And we have a few other events in the next couple of months just to give you a sense of how else we're doing this. We have the Bay Area Mural Program, which creates public art all throughout Oakland. They're using the Oak Stop campus as sort of the groundwork for their Oakland mural tour. And they have murals from 14th Street, where we have a building, all the way down to 24th Street, where we have another building. And they've published a map of their mural tour, which actually is superimposed over Oak Stop's map of its campus. So that's one example of engaging the public. The other example is that later in July, we're going to have the Immersive Arts Alliance Summit, which is a festival of artists that are creating all sorts of engaging and interactive art exhibits that is also going to be spread across the entire campus. Again, a way for people to engage with Oakland's art and Oakland's community across an entire walkable footprint. So again, I thank you all for being here. I'm excited that this conference is happening here, and I look forward to working with you all further.
Thank you, Trevor. Next, we get to meet the leader of the organization in the East Bay, in Alameda and Contra Costa counties, that is doing some pretty incredible, equitable, inclusive, grassroots organizing to change communities. I don't know how many cities there are in the East Bay. Not quite as many as Los Angeles County, but they're close. And it's a lot of hard work, and they're having fantastic success. We'll hear more about that when we hear about the Telegraph Avenue success in one of the workshops later on, and you can see that online right now. That was one of our advanced symposia. Ginger Jui is the executive director of Bike East Bay. She started at Bike East Bay years ago and worked her way up and proved to everyone in the community that she is going to be an amazing leader. And with that, I am very pleased to introduce Ginger Jui. I'm sorry. I knew Ginger for a long time, and I'm having a hard time changing pronouns. I'm very proud to announce them. Ginger Jui, the executive director of Bike East Bay.
I've been doing Open Table on time too. Hey, welcome everybody. Wow, there's like a huge light in my eye. Let's go over here. This is better. Welcome everybody. I am Ginny Dwee, the Executive Director of Bike East Bay, and I want to welcome you to Hushin territory, the traditional, current, and future homelands of the Lishan Ohlone people. I think it's really important to acknowledge the land and the people where we're working and visiting today. Because it really speaks to Bike East Bay's values of bringing our whole selves to work and recognizing the communities that where we're living in so that we can do our work for transportation justice, for community organizing, and for building up the leadership of people of color. Also, we need to do a lot more than just land acknowledgement. I was actually on the website of the Sogoate Land Trust yesterday. Awesome organization led by Ohlone women, and they are using all of the tools that we're familiar with, place building, youth development, building resiliency hubs in parks in East Oakland. So please check them out to learn more about the Lishan Ohlone people on whose land we are here today. Check them out. I also paid my Shumi land tax, and that's a great way to support their work to rematriate Indigenous land to Indigenous people. So one of the things I want to do today, Dave Snyder asked me to do a welcome from Bike East Bay, and I think what I want to do is to welcome us as full people to this summit. And I'm just going to welcome some of our communities in here. One of the reasons it's so important to me is that as a Chinese immigrant, as a non-binary person, I am frequently a bit of an outsider in a room, especially in our advocacy and urban planning and transportation spaces. For those of us who are Black, brown, immigrant, don't come from a middle-class background, you know, we're not always seeing ourselves in a room. So I want to invite all of us into a room. And the first thing I want to do, you know, like shout outs to Trevor and all of the work you're doing. I am so proud to be having the summit here in a Black-owned and Black-operated venue, and thank you for all the work that you're doing for community empowerment. So I want to invite the Black community into the room, and to invite the spirit of Black Oakland, the Black joy, and the Black leadership that makes Oakland such a dope place to live. And next, I'm going to bring some of myself into the room. Like I said, my family, we are immigrants from Hong Kong. My family is from Zhejiang province and also Guangdong province. So I want to invite everyone in here who is an immigrant, who is living in diaspora, whether it's African, Asian, Latinx diaspora, everyone who's in diaspora and immigrant, make some noise, bring yourselves into the room. And Dave Snyder is totally okay, you messed up my pronouns. We're all learning here. And that's why I want to give a super huge shout out to all the queers in the room and all the non-binary folks and all the trans folks. Welcome to the CalBike Summit. And finally, there's a lot of us. It's so fantastic. CalBike Summit is in Oakland this year because I can bring all of us at Bike East Bay staff to come hang out. It's really easy. So I want to thank Dave for bringing us here. And I also want to thank everyone who's not from here. Welcome to NorCal. And just make some noise if you're not from around here. Bring yourselves into the room. And that said, all of us at Bike East Bay staff would love to meet you. So this HOVA app is awesome. I've been messaging a whole bunch of you. Please message us at Bike East Bay. We're easy to find. Robert Prinz, our education director, knows all the best vegan donuts. Robert, raise your hand. He's leading a bike ride on Friday, asking about the vegan donuts. So please connect with us at Bike East Bay. I think that's it for me. Thank you so much, and welcome to the CalBike Summit.
And next, we have the pleasure of hearing from the board chair of the California Bicycle Coalition, Cynthia Rose, who unfortunately can't be here. But she has prepared a rousing welcome that we are going to get to see now.
Welcome, welcome, and good morning, everyone. As board chair of the California Bicycle Coalition and our partner organization, the California Mobility Fund, I feel so privileged to work on our shared mission of advocating for all our communities in California, to make them more equitable, more prosperous, and more inclusive places where bicycling helps people lead healthy and joyful lives. I'm so disappointed that I'm unable to attend this year's summit in person, but I am grateful through technology that I'm able to personally welcome you all virtually. At home, here in Santa Monica, I serve as director of Santa Monica Spoke, and as a board member of the Los Angeles County Bicycle Coalition. I aim to be a connector, as I believe this interconnectivity is what is so critical to our mutual missions and visions for the future, where people in our communities throughout California can thrive. For this reason, I love this year's theme, Connecting. Building off the theme of our 2019 summit here in LA of intersections, this year's theme emphasizes the importance of where connections intersect bicycling with other important social issues. This year's summit is a celebration of these connections, as well as a reminder of how important it is to build an interconnected network. This year, for 2022, we will explore how bicycling connects us to our health, our environment, and our own bodies. We will examine the connections between housing policy and transportation policy. We will unpack and aim to increase our understanding of how racism and other forms of marginalization are inseparably connected to our work. Understanding how these are all intertwined is imperative if we are to fulfill our commitment to being effective advocates in our mission, working for more just communities, communities that are resilient, inclusive, and rooted in equity. And of course, connecting refers to connecting with each other. I have no doubt the connections we will make this year will help strengthen our movement, making us all more powerful together. On behalf of our board, our staff, and the Summit Committee who worked tirelessly on this year's event, thank you for being here. And thank you for allowing me the privilege to welcome you to the 2022 California Bicycle Summit and our theme of connecting.
Thank you, Cynthia, for such a warm and gracious welcome. It was really great. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2022 Bike Summit. My name is Jared Sanchez. I'm a policy advocate with Cal Bike. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce you all to Assembly Member Laura Friedman. Laura Friedman represents the 43rd District, Assembly District in Southern California, which encompasses the cities of Glendale, Burbank, and La Cañada Flintridge. The Assembly member holds very many esteemed positions in the state legislature, including the chair of the very important Transportation Committee in the Assembly, where all of our bills have to pass through, and she's a strong champion for us in that regard. In this role, she's become a dedicated champion for active transportation and sustainability overall. Her recent leadership in Sacramento has drastically changed the policy conversation in the Capitol and beyond. Unfortunately, just like Cynthia, Assemblymember Friedman is not able to join us here in person. We unintentionally planned this summit on a very important day in the Capitol. It's right before their spring break, and there's some last-minute sessions that are happening that she needs to attend. However, she does have a very short welcome message and video that will follow right now. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Laura Friedman. I want to thank you for inviting me to kick off the 2022 summit. When I took over as chair of the Assembly Transportation Committee in 2020, I wanted to shift the focus of the committee to a more sustainable vision of transportation policy. My goal has been to improve our transportation network so that it's safer, more reliable, more environmental. The Bicycle Coalition has been an invaluable partner in advancing bicycle-friendly legislation in the California legislature. Because of your hard work, for the first time, our state will be providing $10 million in rebates to buy an electrical bike this year. Over the past decade, California has laid out bold goals for reducing emissions in the transportation sector, and we're making significant progress. We've created incentives for Californians to purchase zero-emission cars. We've invested in charging infrastructure, and we're going to continue to foster innovation here in California that can set the pace for the rest of the world. But as you all know too well, zero-emission cars are not the solution to our climate problem. Biking, walking, and public transit are crucial to the development of truly sustainable communities. As chair, I'm going to continue to champion these community-based solutions so that every Californian has access to a range of mobility options, cleaner air, and better health. I'll also continue to support legislation to make the roads safer for cyclists, whether it be supporting funding for the active transportation programs or pushing common sense changes to the rules of the road to make it safer for cyclists to operate, because our streets are for everyone. This year, I'm excited to be working with Cal Bike on several of my bills, including AB 2336, which will authorize a pilot program for speed cameras to slow cars down, while using the fine revenue directly to build safer streets, including protected bike lanes. I'm also authoring an omnibus bill, or we call it our Omni Bike Bill, AB 1909. AB 1909 will make sure that cities can't ban e-bikes on bike paths, requires cars to move over a lane when passing cyclists, rather than just a 3-foot buffer, and it will stop cities from requiring bicycle registration if it's costly. It also will authorize bicycles to take advantage of leading pedestrian intervals so that you can be safer. Again, I want to thank all of you for your partnership and your advocacy, and I look forward to continuing to work with you to push the envelope on promoting cycling in California.
Right, for this next segment, can we have some grand entry music? That was, Laura Friedman was deserving of grand entry music. She's an awesome member of the legislature, our most important ally, to be honest. Don't tell other politicians that I said that, because we have a lot of great allies in Sacramento. But as chair of the Transportation Committee, you can bet that she's made a huge difference. You can read an article about her appointment to the Transportation Committee of the Assembly in Streets Blog. Streets Blog, California Streets Blog, is the source for active transportation, sustainable transportation, equitable transportation news in the state of California. Its editor is here, Melanie Curry.
and she's going to lead the next conversation. Our steering committee said that if you have an opening plenary and it's nothing but people talking at you the whole time, people are gonna get a little tired of that. So can we have a little conversation? So we don't have a lot of time, but we have about 15 minutes for a conversation to address the issue. Why is it taking so long to make our communities bicycle friendly? What is it gonna take to speed it up? And for that conversation, we have a really interesting panel with diverse perspectives. We have Andy Fremier, who's a Bay Area Toll Authority director, who we're very grateful that he was able to show up at a rather late notice. Thank you, Andy. Melanie is going to be facilitating the conversation. Clarrissa Cabansagan from Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition, who I met when she was at Transform, who has now really interesting knowledge on the state and local and regional sides of bicycle advocacy. And Warren Logan, who is one of those people who the mayor of Oakland appointed, extremely talented and knowledgeable person on what makes local government work and not work, and was a big part of the mayor's success in helping Oakland get as far as it's gone. So with that, may I invite you forward to the stage? And we're just gonna have like a short conversation.
Excellent. Ooh, good. Dave did my job for me, which is a good thing because I'm not a public speaker. I'm Melanie from Streetsblog. Hi, everybody. This is Clarrissa, who formerly was at Transform, no, still at Transform and now at the Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition. Warren Logan, who I met in grad school. Woo. It's true. And Andy, nice to meet you. I haven't met Andy Fremier before, but I am just going to start by posing this first question. Why does it take so long to get stuff done, to make our streets safer?
I'll start us with a very bright light in my eyes. So let's see if I can fix that. Nope. Yeah, that's fine. I will give you a sort of curt answer is that we don't want them to go fast. The moment that we make things go fast is when people freak out. Sorry, I will add more to that because people are like, what does that mean? I think that transportation is like the construction triangle. You can do things quickly, you can do them at cost, or you will do them with quality, but you can't have all three at the same time. And in the case of city planning, and specifically in transportation planning, another element of that triangle is communication with the community, right? Another element is quality and design, or in the materials that you use. And so I will sort of open it up by saying that we can either have 10-year corridor plans. I know that we're celebrating Telegraph Avenue being yet again redesigned, and we're going on about 10 years of that one project. Or at the same time, we can have an overnight slow streets program. Both of those two projects, if you will, have very different consequences to them, but I sort of lift those up as like, there are positives and negatives of going fast or slow that we should talk about.
That's a really good point. I just want to say really quick, Telegraph is amazing. And Telegraph was amazing when it was done quickly. There were a lot of mistakes, but the design came through, we threw it down, people argued. And I can't believe it's been 10 years. But the design is amazing now, and it's not finished. So you make a really good point and a depressing point about why things take a long time, but you also at the same time undermine your argument, because if we can do things quickly and then build on them, why don't we do it that way? I don't know if Andy or Clarrissa have something along those lines, but.
Well, sure, made me try. It looked like everybody moved away from me, so it must be the bureaucrat in me or something. First of all, I want to thank CalBike for the opportunity to speak. And your first opening group of speakers, starting with the mayor, moving to the secretary, Trevor's story is fantastic, and having the assemblywoman on there as well, I think points to some positive movement. All of them are setting a very strong foundation, both from a policy perspective and lining up money. So that's the big news, right? That's good news. The difficulty is all projects take a long time. Any transportation investment that we make takes a long time, unfortunately, for multiple reasons. It could be the jurisdictions you're going through, the communities you're going through. I think some of the attention we're now paying to the effect of these projects all add up to time. Where I think we also struggle, and look, active transportation is the leader of the pack of this. You can't convince people to get out of their cars. And if you could just do that, I was so impressed by this quick build movement that happened after COVID, right? It was one of the positive things that happened. But you can see it's getting chipped away at aggressively all around the country, including the Bay Area. And a lot of communities are really struggling to keep those quick build projects sort of in place. So the challenge, I think, is getting folks to accept the fact that climate is changing, that e-bikes and other active transportation modes are effective for moving goods and people, and they're great for the health of the world and health for people. So I think it's just always going to be difficult to move these kinds of projects, but you just got to keep marshaling along and build on the foundations that have started.
I feel like I'm in a spicy mood, so I'm going to push back on that a little bit, Andy, but we're friends, it's fine. I don't think that all projects have to be expensive, and I don't think that all projects have to take a lot of time. However, before you clap, and I will give you a couple of examples. I think that one of the things that we learned during COVID is that things do not have to be expensive. The overall cost, last I checked, for the Oakland Slow Students program was $250,000. Compared to Telegraph, which I think we're up to 15 million, maybe 16 for one street versus a network of streets across the city. And the reason for that is because we decided to use cheaper materials and to roll them out quickly. The second point that I'll make about how quickly we can do things is, and I will kind of take off my city hat now that I don't work there anymore, is that you have to decide who you're going to piss off. Because, and it turns out if you decide to piss everyone off, then you win. But that's one of the challenges that I think we as bicycle advocates, bike riders, et cetera, are running into, is that if we're waiting for people to all agree that we should get out of our cars before we make these big moves with transportation, we will never make those big moves. In fact, I would support doing just the opposite. Let's make the big moves, and you can still be upset about it at the end of the day, but the climate has changed and it's time to get moving.
How do you follow Warren Logan?
Go ahead.
I'm looking straight at Dave Campbell, and Dave and I have managed the Safe Routes to Transit grant program in partnership with MTC. And when I came on at Transform in 2013, we gave out $2 million worth of funding for projects that were said to be ready to be implemented within maybe two to 3 years, Dave. It's going on year 10 or 9 since those were funded, and not 100% of those projects have been built. So something that we have learned when it comes to getting bike ped projects in the ground is that our cities across the region across the state are not identical. You have cities like Oakland that have a Department of Transportation, and we applaud all the work there. But when you then compare that city to an El Cerrito or a Vallejo, where you have one planner trying to do many different things, plus this grant they were able to win somehow and to deliver on it, you really start to see the inequities across the board with resources. So I would say just brass tacks, having funding for city staff that are dedicated to bicycle pedestrian implementation is a key component beyond just getting the funding for infrastructure. And something that I've just loved to say is I'm a multimodal advocate. So when we talk about why is bike infrastructure not here, why our city's not bike friendly enough, I think we can be a little myopic when we're only looking at biking, right? When our transportation agencies are all set up to figure out the 9-to-5 commute. And the reality is that most car trips are under 5 miles or less, 60% of them. All of those can be transferred onto a bike. But our whole system, our whole way of funding transportation is dedicated to moving a lot of people from point A to point B on our highways, on transit, not on these, on local arterials, the bike friendliness that we so desire. So some of my strategy is in getting bike infrastructure embedded in housing, affordable housing, get it embedded in the highways, in our congested corridors, pots of funding, get it embedded in things like parking. How do we get to be experts in parking and land use so that we get funded in those things that have formula funding attached to it versus trying to eke out our own little funding here that we're competing for. I think that's the backwards aspect of our funding is transit, highways, roads, they get the funding, and then we got to compete for scraps at the end of the day.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of respond to Warren, because look, I don't disagree with it. I appreciate the challenge. We all learn from our own experience, and my agency, the agency I work for and represent, first of all, doesn't own anything. So any project that we support or try to produce or complete, we're on somebody else's property, and that is complicated. In addition, we're a regional agency, and we're trying to complete a regional program, which is a different problem than I think Warren was talking about, which again, I totally support. Unfortunately, I think we all know that the decisions to build bridges in the 30s and 40s were pretty monumental, but they didn't consider bikes. And so for me to complete the bike path on the west span of the Bay Bridge and get it connected through West Oakland so that it can get on and into the two major metropolitan areas, that's a big project, and it takes a lot of money. So maybe I'm speaking from the perspective of what I'm trying to complete, which is the 500-mile regional bike trail and the bridge connections that were missing from the original consideration. So that would be my perspective on why I said they're complicated and expensive. And I support the quick build effort that the cities are doing. It's fantastic and should be used as an example for doing things better and cheaper and faster.
Absolutely. I think, oh no, I'm going to blank out now. I'm thinking about how many efforts are ongoing at a very high level in the state that have emphasized how much of a hurry we should be in now. And the fact that they're happening on top is kind of interesting. So there's the Climate Action Plan for Transportation Investments. Did I get that right? CAPTI? That's from the state agency. There was a report, the AB 285 report, which came from a law that Laura Friedman passed that basically says our funding system is a mess and we have to fix it. There's all kinds of other things happening. I have it written down here, but now I can't remember. The point is, we know the system is messed up. We can see that funding chart that Caltrans says, okay, this is why everything is so hard to fund. and you look at it and nobody can read the chart. It's complicated. There are a lot of programs. They all have different rules. They all have different funding sources. How do we deal with that? It's great that there's attention at the top, but we're down here on the ground level, and this is where we want to see the results. So what can we as advocates, planners, whoever we are in the world, what can we do to get that attention that's up at the top to comb through all of these complicated problems? Is that a small question?
It's simple. No. There are a couple of different ways you can answer that question. The first of which is that I hope all of you vote, and that's important. And I will be a little bit more specific there that, and this tees off of Andy's point too, these are all local decisions at the end of the day. So you just saw the mayor here, right? Like the people who live in Oakland, many of them elected her, and then she ultimately put forward a set of proposals. And the same goes for our council members. For most of the cities in California, not that many people elect their council members. And so when you think about the number of voices that it takes to hold people accountable, it's actually quite small, right? Like Oakland only has 440,000 people, half of them vote. You end up with about 10,000 people per council member that really voted for that person. You know these people, you know the people around you, I know my council members, and I hold them accountable to the choices that they make, because ultimately they're the ones that are either making budgetary decisions about where money's going in our city, and they're writing letters to our assembly members, to our senators saying, I support that bill, I disagree with that bill, et cetera. All of these people are so readily accessible, and we choose not to engage on those types of levels, but they are truly how you play the game, because otherwise you have the car lobby, I'll say, that's like, slash that out of the bill, change that terminology, et cetera. So being more adept at understanding small nuances in policy is something that we all need to get very used to doing, whether that looks like understanding the different budget aspects, or even lobbying and saying, I want that money to not only go towards bicycle improvements, I want it to also go towards providing bicycles to the people in that community at the same time.
I just want to say something really specious. Warren, you are requiring every citizen to have a grad degree. That's a lot of information.
You know, the one thing
I disagree with that. I'm sorry. I disagree with that though, right? Like each of you lives somewhere, and the people who represent us live in your district. Like they are not amorphous blobs that don't exist, right? And frankly, people who are running your city, and I say this as respectfully as possible, probably don't have grad degrees either. And many of them may not have even, and this is okay, it's not a problem, have graduated college either. Like all of the things in our world, sorry, I feel like I'm campaigning, I don't mean to be, are made up of individual decisions that we are all making together. And many of them are bad.
So I've worked with Warren a few times, and I know getting a word in is hard. So I accept that. Look, my simple piece of advice is get on your bikes and ride. You know, Dave Campbell and I have been working for a long time on the Richmond Centerfeld Bridge project. I find that to be one of the most successful bike access projects we've done in my tenure. But the challenge to keep that lane there is you got to ride on it. You got to use it. You got to show that it can work not only for recreation, but also for commute and for other activities that way. And that really just does take a volume of people that are out there on the bridge showing that these improvements are valuable and effective at changing the environment that we all live in. So get on your bikes and ride.
Andy, you remind me of, so earlier in 2020, Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition did a public opinion poll. And so those of us in the room, we've drunk the Kool-Aid, we know, get people on bikes, but what does the lay person on the street think about bike infrastructure, and how do they interact with that environment? 9 out of 10 people in Santa Clara County rely on their cars, right? We know that we're in the trenches of suburbia when we're going out there in the community. And yet the super majority, 81+% said, I feel comfortable, very comfortable or comfortable on a path like you had just described, right? A dedicated bikeway. And so where there is that common denominator across the public, can the state at least recognize that as a low-hanging fruit to go and implement? I mean, we want a bike superhighway that goes down the El Camino Real, and there's a lot of support for that, and yet we know it's going to be a fight. Where's the funding going to come from? And some of these low-hanging fruit projects, I think, can be the golden ticket to getting that bike friendliness that we so desire. Go ahead.
This will not be a diatribe, I promise. I think one of the things that you've highlighted, Clarrissa, is the importance of data and the way that we make decisions. Oftentimes, planners, policymakers, legislators look at what our mode choices today and say, let's deliver what people are doing already. Lots of people drive, and therefore they must want to drive. But the difference is that there's a latency for a lot of people who say, I have to drive, but I would be happy to bike or take transit or walk if you provided me with that type of infrastructure. And I think that's the important question is, where would you feel comfortable if we provided that versus what are you doing now and how can I continue to help you do that?
Cool. About 2 minutes ago, Dave gave me a peace sign. I think that means our time might be up. We could talk all day, of course, but I think we should probably wrap this up. Thank you all for listening to us, and I think Dave probably has something to say. I'm not right. Okay. Thank you, and thank you guys.
So thanks so much. Appreciate you. One of the themes of that conversation was money. And I want to diverge from my planned talk for a minute just to clarify something. I know Robert Prince, you had asked me a question, and I think you and I both assumed the wrong answer to something. So I want to clarify right now what I just learned from Laurie Waters from the California Transportation Commission. Thank you, Laurie, for clarifying. In January, the governor released a budget that included $500 million for the active transportation program, a boost there, and $100 million for the Highway Safety Improvement Program, HSIP program that Toks talked about. He said that the $500 million that the governor recently announced as part of the gas tax thing was in addition to that. And when he said that, I thought it was a mistake, but it's not. So that's new money. We are now at $1.1 billion of new money for active transportation in the state of California. $900 million to go. And that's not a joke. Let's do it. So I'm going to close out and leave you with some thoughts that hopefully will help everyone have a really successful summit. I want to start with the story of an event that got me started in bicycle advocacy in 1990 in San Francisco. I was hanging out with a bunch of activists who organized these coffee houses, and we would get together and talk about all the various causes that we were working on and play music. And I met up with some people, and I studied politics in college and was a bit of a journalist at the time. And so I was involved in Central America advocacy. I worked as a volunteer for an organization called Media Alliance that worked to improve the reporting on the revolutions in Central America, on the democratic efforts by the people of those countries to free themselves from the dictators that the United States had imposed on them. And I felt like that was really important work, but it didn't touch me personally. I didn't know anyone from Central America. I didn't speak Spanish. And so when I met people and went to this event, we organized a bicycle parade on Earth Day in 1990. And when I was involved in the organizing around that event, and when we did that bicycle parade throughout San Francisco, I had an epiphany and I thought, I can be a bike activist. That's what I'll do. That way I can support, I can work in my own community. I can help reduce America's dependence on oil and therefore our need to have military all over the world. I can help the environment. I can help people's pocketbooks, which I was keenly aware of at the time. And it was that event. It was the parade and the meetings organizing that parade that led me to that. I hope that this event will help everyone here have similar kinds of inspirations. Today, it was people, I made connections then. It was people that I love, Cynthia Larson, Madeline Larson, Joel Pomerantz, Donald Francis, and someone who I didn't know existed at the time, Catherine Porter, organized the Earth Day event. She's now become a friend of mine. Those connections made me a bike activist, and somehow or another I made a career out of it. That's the power of connection. That's the power of events like this. You all are generating that power here today and tomorrow through the connections that you make. Thank you for coming. You are going to make a huge difference by being here. So thank you for that. And of course, this event, which hopefully is going to make a huge difference, couldn't happen without a lot of people. And I'm going to start with the people that I work with most closely, the staff of the California Bicycle Coalition. You met Jared Sanchez, Jen Guitart, Kevin Claxton, Stephanie Alfaro, Laura McCamey, Nikolai Kreidler. They are all folks who are working really hard and worked really hard in the last month to pull this event off. Last Thursday was a holiday for the California Bicycle Coalition staff, Cesar Chavez Day. We worked it. We're taking Monday off. Michelle, Barrio Nuevo Mazzini. Michelle, is she within earshot? She was sitting out at the table taking people's registrations. She has been working really hard for the last 3 months and longer to pull this event off as our main organizer. I don't see her. Is that her over there peeking in? Is she there? She's not here? Well, I want people to tell her that we gave her a huge round of applause. So everybody, Michelle. She put up with a lot of stuff yesterday. People, please be kind to her. This is the first event that a lot of us have done in a long time. So please be kind to Michelle. She's doing a great job. Evan with Exact Change Company is our AV specialist. The workers on Michelle's staff and the catering company that is here, I think they're mostly not here, but if you are working this event, raise your hand and thank you. Our steering committee that pulled off this event helped set a lot of the tones of things. I'll just mention their organizations real quick. Policy Link, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, California Walks, Bike East Bay, Shasta Living Streets, the LA County Bicycle Coalition, Cycles of Change, the San Francisco MTA, the City of Oakland Streets Blog, the Scraper Bikes, and our artist and activist, Sinai Dennis. Those people helped sort of steer the event and give it its tone. The board of directors of the California Bicycle Coalition helps make this organization run. If you're on the board, could you please stand up and get some gratitude? Stephen, that Josh in the back. Thank you. And our sponsors, the City of Oakland, Caltrans, Alta Planning and Design, Wilderness Trail Bikes, Lyft, The New Wheel, the California Bicycle Attorney, Tool Design, Hellbiz, Super Pedestrian, Eco Counter, Darrow, the Mineta Transportation Institute, Bicycle Coffee is going to provide coffee for us the whole time over there, and Sierra Nevada. So thank you to our sponsors and a ton of volunteers. If you're a volunteer, raise your hand. Thank you very much. They're all over there setting up. And I want to recognize the elected officials who are here. Robert Rayburn is a director on the BART board. Jean Walsh is an AC Transit director. John Bowders, Emeryville mayor. Is there any other elected official who would like to be recognized who I don't know is here? And then I want to give a special shout out to our caterer for lunch today. We are getting served lunch in the pop-up plaza on Telegraph Avenue by a food truck that's coming, and by Mama T's Catering, which is a little place right across the street. We're really thrilled that we get to support and benefit from the Oakland caterers and food establishments. Mama T has some great soul food. Her mother died this week, and she's going to deserve a lot of love. And she told us that and says, I still want to provide you food. I want to get my mind off my mom. So she's doing that, even though she's going through some real grief right now. So if you see Mama T at lunch today, give her some love, please, and some gratitude. I want to address a few logistics. Thank you, Ginger, for mentioning the app. Some of us have a bad attitude about apps. I'm one of them. It bugs me that to find out information about the California Bicycle Summit, you have to press a button on your phone that has the Hoover logo on it. But it so happens that it works really well. And that's the only way you're going to find out about last minute changes and special venues. So please download the app. We will have paper schedules for you, so you don't need to. But for example, there will be events coming up that may only be announced on the app. There are some unofficial events, like the Thursday night Jeopardy party, like Saturday's Bike East Bay ride that you can read about on the app, like the bike party on Friday night. That is going to be a fantastic ride, a real great piece of East Bay culture and bike culture, and you can see that on the app. There will be other events too, like, for example, and this is the first time anyone's hearing of this, cocktail discounts at the bar across from the event center, the EBXO. They're providing special summit cocktails and drinks. If you have your badge, you can get a discount, and you'll only find out about that on the app and now. So I want to ask one more favor of people to help make this be a successful event. And that is, I want you to think about what kind of person you are when you engage or connect with another. Are you like me? And that is that you like to talk, you think, and maybe rightfully so, that you have a valuable opinion, that you have some important knowledge, that you want to respond to what they said, that this little nugget is important and you're confident and you're just going to say it and, you know, thank you very much. Are you one of those people like me? Or are you someone who is more of a listener, more of a thinker? You listen to what people say, you listen to what someone else says, and you learn a lot that way. You might ask a question, but you're not going to be aggressive about it. You might ask a question rather than give your opinion in order to learn more. You're one of those people. There's a certain brilliance there. Are you one of those people? Think about that. Think about who you are. And I challenge you to do the opposite. I challenge you, if you're a talker, to listen. I challenge you, if you're a listener, say what you think. Those of us who are talkers need to hear what you've learned from listening so much. So I challenge you to do that. Please do that. With that challenge, there's a few other logistics that I want to mention. I want to thank Ginger again for so explicitly welcoming diverse communities to this event. Thank you for that. We want this to be a safe event for everybody. We've done a few things to facilitate that. I'm sure we could do better, and tell us what you think we can do better when it's over. There are a few things that we've done. We have a space in the Broadway gallery in the back. There's a room that's going to be like a safe space. So if you need to just get away and talk to someone and sit quietly, you can go to that room in the back of the gallery room. You can talk to anybody with a staff thing on their badge and ask them anything if you need any support. And finally, we have a reporting system. If you go to calbike.org/incident report, there's a form there that encourages you to report something that you see that's a problem. Like, for example, if somebody uses the wrong pronouns, report it. Report it. We're not going to shame anybody. It's not about that. It's about learning. It's about learning to be together. It's about learning to connect safely. And I learn from that, and that's not the only time that I've learned from reporting. We all can learn from hearing what other people really have to say about us when they're not willing to say it to our face. It's a confidential form if you want it to be. So use that, please. And then finally, I want to just close out with a reference to the theme of connecting. It was the Earth Day event in 1990 that got me to be a bicycle advocate. That, like this event here, I did not expect to change my life, but it did. I'm privileged to have made a career out of that. And I recognize that that privilege was pretty powerful, and things have changed a lot. For example, I lived in San Francisco with $285 a month rent. That for a decade. That can't happen anymore. That's why we're talking about housing and economy in our summit. That's why there are sessions about that. For example, I didn't have college debt either. That's another privilege. The how we do education is connected to, can we be bicycle advocates? For example, in 1990, the non-Hispanic white population in California was 58%. Today, it's 35%. If we don't connect our work to racism, if we don't connect our work to an understanding of how racism and sexism has impacted people differently and made it very different environments for people to even think about riding a bike or to think about engaging with their government, we're not going to succeed. We have to make those connections in order to be good bike advocates. So with that, I want to thank you all again for being here and being willing to make the connections to make this a great summit. And I'm going to go back to the challenge that I made, and I'm going to ask you all to raise hands this time. So who is a talker? Raise your hand. I'm a little surprised and gratified to see a little rough gender balance on that one. So congratulations. Keep your hands up. I'm sorry, keep your hands up. Who's a talker? And come on, raise your hand if you're a talker. Now look around, everybody look around. Who are the talkers? All right, that's a good thing. I'm a talker, I'm not ashamed. All right, now who's a listener? Raise your hand. Everybody look around. Look around, who's a listener? All right, awesome. Now, here's your homework before the next session starts. We can leave, find somebody who's not like you, and have a conversation with them on the way back to the center. If you're a listener, you get to talk. If you're a talker, listen. And enjoy yourself at the summit. Thank you.